Gender-based violence is deeply rooted in gender inequality and continues to be one of the most notable human rights violations within all societies. Ours is no different. Gender-based violence is violence against a person because of their gender. Now, both women and men experience gender-based violence, but all too common, the victims are women and girls. In recent times, we have seen a surge of gender-based crimes, which is advocacy groups in a stir. We await Parliament to pass legislation to protect the vulnerable. But in the meantime, what do? Tonight, we discuss the exposure of gender-based violence. Our guests, former magistrate Cleopatra Christie, who represents the Bahamas Crisis Center, and a women's advocate and a victim and survivor of domestic violence, Densandria Taylor. I'm your host, Jerome Sawyer. We'll see you on the other side of this break. So the project really pays itself back.
Correct.
They set up
At the conference, the school.
As a journalist, I always have to focus on the facts, and sometimes that means going to investigate for myself. On the Record, Thursdays at 8 p.m. right here on RTV.
Welcome back. Let's get right into what happened in news since we last spoke. Now that a new recording system has been launched for the judiciary, it promises to speed up the time it takes for judges to hear cases and will also assist in addressing an existing backlog. So that means now that this new system, this new digitalization system is in place, you literally can get your court transcripts immediately after the case is completed each day. And so that's going to really impact the way that the court works and hopefully cut back on some of the delays. So congratulations to the sitting Chief Justice and to the former Chief Justice who put in a lot of work to get this system up and running. So kudos to you all. We're looking forward to some efficiencies, even more efficiencies within the court with this new system. Well, after 2 weeks and little movement in law enforcement on allegations against a sitting PLP MP, the nation's chief is finally breaking his silence on the matter. Prime Minister Davis admitting to reporters that up to that point, the MP still had not been questioned or taken in for questioning. Days later, Police Commissioner Clayton Fernandez confirmed that the sitting Member of Parliament at the center of this controversy would come in for questioning this week. Fernandez saying that investigators are ensuring that they are thorough. So a lot being said on both sides about this. At one point, the government side was not saying anything. Prime Minister issuing the only statement there, raising a lot of concern, though, about these allegations and what's happening. But again, we're going to wait to see what happens in all of this. Meanwhile, an Indian nurse is behind bars after being accused of the rape of a passenger that he was tending to on the MSC Escape. The 34-year-old now faces charges for the sexual assault of a 41-year-old woman from Cleveland, Ohio, back on April 17th. According to police, the woman was receiving care at the ship's infirmary when she was allegedly sexually assaulted. So, of course, that happened while the ship was in port. So this Indian nurse was charged here and will be tried here. One cruise line is giving a scathing assessment of downtown Nassau, saying the tourism destination got a very low ranking by its guests. In a recent interview with the president and CEO of Royal Caribbean Cruise Lines, Michael Bailey, he told us that Nassau ranks in the bottom 10 destinations among survey passengers. No surprise there for me. I have long said, and others have long said, that downtown Nassau really needs a facelift. There's so many things wrong, and so much more needs to be done. And we're about to open this huge cruise port. What's that going to mean for downtown Nassau? Just a lot of work, a lot of dilapidated buildings, trash, vagrants, all kinds of things going on downtown, which makes it a not so good experience for our visitors, whether they're cruise ship or stopover visitors. Well, some shocking news coming out of the broadcast field this week. Don Lemon and Tucker Carlson fired from CNN and Fox. According to Time magazine, in a matter of minutes on Monday, the face of cable news changed dramatically. First, Fox News reported that it had parted ways with Tucker Carlson, the host of the conservative cable news network hit 8 p.m. The 8 p.m. show, that is. Tucker Carlson Tonight, that's the name of the show. Then, just as the memes started flowing, longtime CNN host Don Lemon posted a note on Twitter informing followers that he had just heard from his agent and not management that he too was fired. Now, CNN has since disputed that, tweeting that Lemon was offered an opportunity to meet with management, but instead released a statement on Twitter. So, I guess it depends on who you ask, whether you're surprised about this. We know that the Dominion case against Fox News resulted in a huge settlement, $787 million in the settlement. Somebody had to go home. Of course, Tucker Carlson was tied to that. All of this, of course, over the election lies perpetrated. Don Lemon has been having some issues with CNN for a while, if you've been watching. I'm a huge CNN fan, so I've been paying attention. He's had quite a few bumps, that's putting it mildly, since moving off of the evening primetime show to the morning show for the past few months. We wish them both well. That's all I'm going to say on that. Sometimes you just can't believe your own hype in this business. You always got to stay grounded. No matter how big you are, you got to stay grounded. That's a wrap for Since We Last Spoke. On the Record returns with our discussion on the exposure of gender-based violence with our guest, former magistrate Cleopatra Christie, and a survivor of domestic violence, Densandria Taylor. Stay close. So the project really pays itself back. Correct. They set up
At the conference, the school.
As a journalist, I always have to focus on the facts, and sometimes that means going to investigate for myself. On the Record, Thursdays at 8 p.m. right here on RTV.
You're watching On the Record. Welcome back. As I said, our topic tonight is the exposure of gender-based violence. And joining me, former magistrate, as well as a former Solicitor General and a former consultant in the Office of the Attorney General, Cleopatra Christie, here also representing the Bahamas Crisis Center. We also have with us an advocate, Densandria Taylor, who is a survivor of domestic violence herself. Ladies, welcome to On the Record. Thank you so much for agreeing to be my guest this evening.
Thank you for having us.
As a former magistrate, someone who has worked within the legal system, within the Attorney General's office for most of your career, I think that is correct if I say that. At this point, is gender-based violence a human rights violation? Let's start at that point.
Well, thank you for having me. And the question is apt at this time. Gender-based violence is a human right. It's a human right that women and children, that they all deserve to have and are entitled to. So we mustn't forget it. It's a human right.
And what has happened? Because human rights, for me, seem almost natural, and I don't know whether it's that I've come from a different background, or maybe I've learned things differently. But there are just certain rights that seem natural and that should happen. But when we're now at this point where we continue to have these discussions, I keep asking, what has happened? Why have we not evolved?
That's a difficult one. No, we have evolved. I mean, gender-based violence has been with us for a very long time, all of our lives. It's been here forever. But we here in the Bahamas, we have taken steps to rectifying the situation, addressing it, but we have not yet reached the point where we've done sufficient. When we look at all that has been happening in recent times, you can see and feel that really more needs to be done. So what do we need to do to curb this violence against women and children?
And what do we need to do?
Well, first of all, we need to know what it is. And remember, when we talk about gender-based violence, we're talking about violence against women and children and men. We mustn't forget the men, because the moment they see a woman talking about gender-based violence, they think that we're only talking about ourselves. But it's a topic that includes men as well. And so what we need to do is we have to talk about it. We need to know what it is. We need to educate our community. We need to take it to the schools. We need to just spread the word. Gender-based violence is wrong, and we cannot tolerate it.
And Sandra, do you think that the advocacy groups are doing enough at this point, or there needs to be more?
We are doing, and I say we because I too myself are a part of many groups that advocate for women to be protected and children. I just feel like the support, and not just women, I just feel like more men. If they would step out, if they would say something, it would be taken more seriously. But we are doing as much as we can, I feel. We're speaking about it, we're writing about it, we're standing in the streets, which is, 1940, but we're still doing it,
We'll get back to, I think, a little later on, what more can men do? I want to bring that up later. But would you agree that we have seen a surge in reports on gender-based violence in recent times? Is it that people are reporting more, that women are reporting more, are police doing more, or are the cases increasing? Because I know from where we sit within the newsroom, we see a lot more cases going to court. They're now being reported on more. Is there a surge, or is there an increase in the reporting?
Well, I think it's a question of both. I think there is a surge. There's no denying of that. When we read the media, when we look at the statistics provided even by the police, it's growing. It's a growing scourge, and we really need to do something about it. But then the question comes of what it is, what should we do? We need to speak about it, as I said. We need to make people aware. We need to flood our TV stations with PSAs, public service announcements, so that we can help and assist with the education of our people, and just letting people know what it is and what we can do to prevent it.
You said something that really stuck out to me, the education. Do you think the perpetrators understand, and I don't even want to use the word appreciate, do they recognize that what they are doing is wrong?
Most of the time, they think it is trauma. Some young men, I would say, grew up with it, and they feel it's normal. So the normalcy is more or less what's happening, and they see this is what I must do to control my wife, my woman, my girlfriend, to keep her, so we can be together. So it's a pattern, and I don't think they see it as wrong.
So do you think we've normalized this behavior?
Maybe to some extent, but I do think that perpetrators, you know, it's their way, and it may be their way of crying out for help, that something is wrong with them, that they need to address certain things in their lives. But perpetrators, remember, in domestic violence, perpetrators are exercising power and control. And that is their way, and that's how they make it through life. That's how they rule the household that they live in. Okay. You know, I'm in control. You know, do as I say. You must do as I say. Go when I say. And all of the other things. It's all about power and control. How do I control this woman? You know, you talk about men who are jealous. Well, yes, so when you're suffering from those kinds of things, jealousy and power and control, you need help. And there is help out there for the perpetrators. There is some help. But many men don't take on that help, you know.
Are women feeling more empowered to come forward and to report and speak out about the violence against them?
Definitely, definitely. What has helped me over the years is I've watch a lot of TV, watch a lot of LMN, but growing up, I just never saw nobody like me. Until I did, I saw a Bahamian woman came on TV and she talked about her experience. I was like, oh, that's me right there. So now I can speak out, or, you know, I can be the next role model for somebody else to come and speak out about their own story. So,
We'll get to your story in a bit. I don't want to preempt that too much. But do you find that women feel empowered when they hear your story and when you're able to speak? Do you see that sort of light bulb go off when they hear your story and they realize what it is that you've come through?
Oh, yes, definitely. I find that they're more even encouraged to ask, what can I do? Or can you help me? Ask you questions. Well, how did you get help? Well, can you help me? But before, always was shy to ask for help. Most women, I think they just keep it to themselves to protect themselves, protect family, and protect the perpetrator.
You think there is an element of shame attached to it?
Well, I think that's it. That's a great part of it. People don't want to talk about domestic violence. People don't want to disclose what's happening in the privacy of their homes. And sometimes they're afraid, you know, the husband or the partner is saying, you don't tell, and, and that's one way of keeping it all together and keeping the fear alive and well in the home. You don't talk about it, they keep you to yourself. It means that they don't allow you to socialize with your friends and families. They lock you in the house if that is necessary when they go out, to make sure you don't get out and that you keep this family secret and protect it. So a lot of women are shamed, embarrassed, and many other reasons too as to why they don't talk and they don't come forward and report. And it could be also a question of finances. He may be the breadwinner of the house, and of course I've got children and I need to look after my children, I need to feed my children, so how can I now expose the breadwinner? And then of course, you know, you have women who sometimes say, okay, I don't want him to go to jail, I don't want the police involved, and that sort of stuff. And so it's all suppressed, and we keep it bottled until there is a massive explosion and you decide, well, I can't take it any longer, and you come forward and you speak.
Based on the figures provided by police last year, domestic violence increased by 52%. From 383 reports in 2020 to 585 in 2021. Would you say these figures are accurate? Are they too low, too high? Just based on your experience.
Well, based on my experience, I can say that yes, there has been an increase, and that is what the police and their numbers are showing. But imagine all of the numbers that have not been reported, and that is always my concern. I pay very little attention to the numbers because my concern are those women who have not come forward, or women who have come forward and they've determined, well, listen, I don't want to take an action, I don't want to make a complaint, and so it's not counted. So we need to be concerned with the numbers, yes, but also about the numbers that are not reported.
On the sore subject of the legislation, promises, as we all know, continue to happen. What needs to be done in Parliament as it pertains to the legislation? What legislatively needs to be done to protect our women and children?
Well, that's a wide and broad topic, the legislation, because presently we do have some legislation on the book. In particular, we have the Domestic Violence Protection Orders Act, and that is an act which gives the court the power to intervene where women are at risk. So if you make a complaint to the police and then you move on to the court will then intervene. The court hears the action, hears your story, hears the perpetrator's story, and makes an order if in the circumstances the court thinks that it is justified, that a protection order is made. And a protection order simply means, well, it says to the perpetrator, you're not to interfere with this person, you're not to come within 500 feet, you're not to threaten, or harass, etc., etc. So all of that is embodied in what we call a protection order, and that order is effective and put in place for about 2 to 3 years, and a copy of that order is lodged with your police station closest to you, so that in the event there's a breach, and sometimes the court puts a penal attachment to the order saying, if you breach the order, then you'll go to prison for 18 months, 2 years, or whatever.
Is that enough?
Well, it isn't enough, and it's not enough, because even with that piece of legislation, the Protection Orders Act, we do have some concerns. In order to get a perpetrator before the court, you have to serve a summons. And only a court issues a summons, and only a bailiff or a police officer can serve a summons. And in order to do that, you have to pay $70. And most women don't have $70 to pay to a bailiff or a police officer to serve a summons. So that's a drawback in and of itself. So we need to look at ways and how do we make it easier for women to have access to justice.
There's also a piece of legislation, the Protection of Women Against Violence bill, now in circulation. It's in draft form, I understand. Tell us a little bit about that and what that is designed to do.
Well, that is a new piece of legislation that is being now considered by the authorities. And again, it is taking a look at the violence against women and children. And what this piece of legislation seeks to do, and I don't intend to speak about it in any great detail, we need a whole show to really talk about all of the things involved in this act. But what it does, it creates a commission, it sets up a foundation, it sets up the mechanism whereby the minister responsible can set up strategic plan, set out strategic planning for how we will address domestic violence. It speaks to the rights of victims. And for the first time, the law comes out and speaks specifically as to the rights of women and what role the police should play in these kinds of matters. And so it takes a greater and a closer look at the violence against women in our community and setting up the mechanism to assist in bringing it to the forefront.
And of course, this piece of legislation is in draft form and will be circulated for wide consultation, correct?
Well, I cannot say that it will be circulated for wide consultation, but I do know that it is presently being discussed, and there's consultation ongoing. Now, I don't know how far that is going to go.
Of course, that'll be decided at another level, not ours.
Yes.
Ladies, we're at the point where we're going to take a break right here. When we return, more On the Record right after this. So the project really pays itself back. They
Correct.
set up
At the conference,
more the school
As a journalist, I always have to focus on the facts, and sometimes that means going to investigate for myself. On the Record, Thursdays at 8 p.m. right here on RTV.
You're watching On the Record. Welcome back. And now for our man on the street, the Tweenies, with our Joshua Williams.
Yes, I do. In this country, that is apparent, and I don't think it's right. Well, I think what could be done is, because they are no more special than you and I, they just be treated the same that you or I would be treated if we were being accused of something no different.
Right is right and wrong is wrong. It's regardless of who it is, you know, and the law is set in place. Man makes law, and also the law makes criminals. Because when I see, or we see, people who are in power do things that we know, some alleged, some are factuals, because some people, they don't do it by themselves without other persons knowing about it, and they have facts on them. But, you know, because of whatever your belief, you have to go and seek the right things to get it corrected. And when you go to certain people, you don't get nowhere further.
I have a big problem with that, because I'm thinking, I'm not stereotyping, I'm not no political advocate, nothing. Just that I noticed that just night before last night, someone was accused of sexual assault in Bimini, and they were picked up immediately. I heard what the commissioner said, that they're doing their investigation thoroughly. So I'm thinking, like, how could this person be picked up in a day or two? And this has been going on for almost 2 weeks with the MP. I think it's kind of unfair, and it sends a mixed message to the residents of this country.
Thanks a lot, Joshua. And back to our discussion on the exposure of gender-based violence with my guests, Cleopatra Christie and Densandria Taylor. Densandria, I'm going to really now put the spotlight on you for a bit. We know that you are I'm going to say a survivor of domestic violence meted out to you by someone you were in a relationship with. Tell us your story, and what was it like for you?
Well, what happened started for me a very long time ago when I was in college. And while studying, I met someone, decided to pursue a relationship with him. And the signs were there, you know. One of the first things that really caught me, we were dating, we were talking, and we had went out, and I didn't return a call. Next thing I know, he had this letter written in his blood. He cut himself, and he wrote a letter to me in his blood. Oh, please don't ever do that again. You need to answer your call. I'm going to die. I'm going to kill myself. So that was like my first conditioning. I had to realize that if I ever leave, he's going to die. So I can't leave. So we went on, and there were times we were in a car together, just driving, and he would crash into a wall with me in the car. He would always, and if I went to the police, it was one time I actually was driving to the police station, and I got there. He said, well, I'm going to hit you in your stomach. I'm going to hit you in your head. These are the places, you know, you won't have no marks showing up. And he did that, and we were en route to the police station. So I got there, told the police what happened. They said, oh, but this is you got to go home. You got to deal with it. And I went away. I felt hopeless. Among other things, he threatened my mental stability. He would just show up if I'm at school, college. He shows up, sits in my class, and he just waits on me. There was one incident where he decided that hitting me wasn't enough. He wanted to make sure he could control me. So he had this car. We got a car. Little did I know he had these devices on it. So if I was on a conversation with the phone, he would find out where I am, and they also had a locator on it, which I didn't know. And he would come there and fight me or have a whole argument, try to beat me up. It got so crazy to a point I realized, I said, you know what, let me just move myself away, try to get help. Really, there was no help. There was no place I really could go. He used to call females in front of me, had them pick him up. He used to have them do things to him in front of me. Like, I just had to enjoy that. And I say, you know what? I think the real issue is if I don't leave, I'm gonna die.
What was it that really helped you to decide, that's it, I've had enough, I'm out?
There was one time we were having an argument, and I was in the house, and he kept hitting my head against the wall. The person next door heard it. She tried to come inside to help, and she couldn't get in, but she was just screaming my name out, and she was talking to me through the door and saying, Precious, if you get out alive or whatever, she say, I here for you. She say, I'll help you, I'll do something. And I just like, if I get out here alive, and it kind of bring the bell off in my head, and I said, you know what? I need to get out here alive. And I got out. I had a job opportunity, and I said, you know, I need to distance myself. So for me, that was perfect. I left the island, and I started my journey to actually heal and get away from my abuser.
Was the person ever prosecuted?
No. I was told there was nothing they could have done because we were in a committed relationship.
Besides the physical abuse that you endured, I mean, just talking about just hitting your head against the wall, I mean, that's one incident, but aside from the physical hurt, how did this affect you mentally?
Well, my self-esteem really went to the ground. I was ashamed. I had nowhere to go. Mentally, I know I get overwhelmed normally, but any little thing would just put me in distress. I was afraid of relationships. I was afraid to trust. I didn't know what to do with myself, honestly. Just trying to figure out life. And that's how I was. I was just almost like a zombie, just trying to figure it out.
But at some point, you got past it.
Yeah, I did. I got past it because I had to reach down and give myself, what do you say, give yourself some hope. I had to reach out and send that rope down for myself in that hole I was in. And I pulled myself up. I did a lot of reading. I watched a lot of shows. I tried to engage with persons, you know, who had similar issues. I even put myself through, not really Sandlands, but I went and tried got some counseling myself, which was an offer to me. And I went to a lot of therapy, just talking to people and trying to just find a way.
Were there times you just wanted to give up?
A lot of times. A lot of times. And what kept me probably was my family. You know, just knowing that I have a strong religious background and I should never give up, never just feel as hopeless. Because I feel I'm ready to be like a dog on the street. But I say that's the lowest I could go. I can't go no lower than that, you know? And for me, that was it. Trying to maintain my background, how I grew up, and knowing I had strength in other things.
Even after you left, were you afraid for your life at times?
I was always afraid. I think I never stopped being afraid. I never stopped being afraid. But what happened, transitioning back to the island after that teaching stint, when I came back, I just confronted him. I looked him in the eye one day, you know, tell him what he did to me, you know, tell him that was going to be enough. Then he moved away. I stayed in the country, and then that was how I moved on, confronting him.
How do you use your experience to help other women who find themselves in your position?
Well, I spend more time listening. I find myself being a part of organizations and groups like Women United, Rise Bahamas, any advocacy group that I can definitely reach out and help. If they reach out to me personally, I may not have much, but whatever I have, I try to give, you know, so that I can, you know, just provide hope, if nothing else.
Cleopatra, when you hear that story, how many other stories are there like that out there that are happening as we sit here and speak right now?
Well, let me just first congratulate you for coming out and speaking about your experience with domestic violence. But it's not an unusual story. This is something that happens to women frequently. Hitting of the head, beating, the choking, All of that happens. And you see, imagine a man with his hand, large hand around your neck, choking you. I mean, what are you thinking? This is it. The end is here. Yeah. Who's going to help me? And here he is, towering over you, power, exercising all the power and control. I got you just where I want you. And so it's a powerful story. And yes, we counsel persons like yourself who's been through this type of experiences. And you can't do it alone. You really need help. People need help. People need to step out. People need to ask for help. And they need counseling. It's very important. How do you manage all of the stuff that's going on in your head? And it's been going on for such a long time. And we at the Crisis Center can help you get
That
back.
is my question to the woman, the young lady, the child, even the man who is watching this and living this. What does she or he do? What is the first step?
Distance yourself. And it's hard to say because there's no place to go in the Bahamas. There's no shelter, there's no room, but distance yourself. I mean, just get out of that surrounding, and then they get out of your head because they're in your head constantly, so you believe nothing else but what they say. So just getting out.
Well, you know, getting out isn't always easy. I mean, getting out seems to be the ultimate thing that you should do. But people don't have anywhere to go. There are limited shelters. You know, it's finances, it's children, it's a car.
Who do you tell someone? Do you talk about it? Do you say, this is happening to me?
You tell everyone. I would say tell everyone, embarrass them, get them, expose them, tell everyone. And by telling everyone, the shame that was once on you is now imparted on them. You know, you don't have to carry all that by yourself. So I say tell everyone and just make it your story. Because if somebody has to whisper and tell my story, they might not tell it correct. So I tell my own story.
Tell your story.
Excellent.
I listened to the fact that you went to the police and said, listen, this is happening. And they looked at you and said, well, we don't see anything. Is that a common issue? Is that something that victims are facing?
Unfortunately, we don't always get the same kind of consistent treatment from police stations that we go to. And that's a complaint that we get often. Again, we need a consistent protocol in all police stations. We need the police to be sensitized about this question of domestic violence and how they react to it and what they should do and how they should assist the victim. We need to do that. But let me just put this in here. The police themselves have now started a domestic violence unit, which has just been created over the last 8-9 months. And so there's staff, it is properly staffed, and they are getting complaints, and they refer those complaints after they receive them to the crisis center. So it's a beginning for the police.
It's a step.
It's a step, and it's a big step.
We have your experience, as horrific as it is, I know by and large represents the majority, and that mainly women. But there are men as well out there. And I'm sure as a man, it must be even more difficult to go to the police and say, I'm being abused. I mean, it's almost natural you expect from a woman, but what does a man do? Because now, we carry bigger egos.
Yes.
We like I said, we carry bigger egos. What about those men? And the reality is, it is happening to men.
Well, you're right about that, and it hits the nail right on the head. It happens to men, but they don't come forward. And if they get to the police station, they're afraid of that. They think that their colleagues are going to laugh at them. Right. Big man like you, let this woman do this, da-da-da-da-da. And so, yes, it's a real problem for men. It's a very real problem for men.
Do you counsel at the crisis center as well?
Yes, we do. We do counsel men. We don't counsel perpetrators, but we do counsel men who have been in domestic violence situations.
as that neighbor who came there and said, if you get out alive,
Correct.
I am here. How can we be better neighbors? What can we, and not just the physical neighbor, but the brother's keeper neighbor, the family, the friend who's no, how can we be the better neighbor to say, hey, there is help?
Take the phone off record and call the police. I think right now we sensitize, we want it's entertainment to see those things, and I've saw a host of those cases where women are getting abused and they're recording, and I'm like, why
We
recording
spending
it?
the whole time doing this.
Right.
And
Right.
never
Doing this
Correct.
as opposed to this.
that.
Yes.
Correct.
Exactly.
And I mean, I'm not just going to say jump in the middle of it, but I'm going to call the police. You know, I'm going to call somebody, I'm going to call for help, I'm going to alert, because I think with numbers, what can you do? You're going to run, you're going to leave, or you're going to stop what you're doing? Because there's, there's witness. But I think, yeah, it's more we can do. It's so much more. I feel as an educator, my goal is to start in my classroom and to tell students, even if this boy who buy you lunch, the next day, he want to tell you where you could go or cannot go, I say, just leave that alone. Walk away quickly. And that's what I try to tell my students.
Do we have, and I often bring this up, do we have to start teaching our boys how to be men?
Well, I think we should start the education process early in the primary schools, how you respect women, respect your mother, respect your elders, and I think it has to start there. This isn't something that you can just bring on 15, 16-year-olds,
Yeah.
but it has to
Little
start
boys.
somewhere where they know the value of respect, respecting people's wishes. If I say no, it is no, and I mean no. It's that kind of stuff. So
Yeah, and I mostly think it should be men teaching men. You know, too often we are the teachers as females. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yes.
they need to see more examples of men doing the right thing.
Correct.
Ladies, unfortunately, we are out of time. First of all, Cleopatra Christie, thank you so much for the work that you are doing. And, you know, as you said, we are making steps. Are they enough? Probably not. There needs to be more. And but I thank you for the work that you're doing through the Crisis Center and all the other work that you're doing, and continue to push, because that's what we need. We need those continuous voices out there telling us and advocating for this. Densandria, first of all, thank you for being brave.
Yes.
What you have done in this space, I think, will impact many out there. And I thank you for telling your story and coming on and sharing with us. And thank you for being that beacon of hope.
Yes.
And I hope that your story tonight inspires somebody to tell their story. Like you say, tell anyone who will listen. Tell them, shame them,
Yeah.
but not just tell, but take action
Good.
and each step. So thank you for coming on and talking tonight, and continue to do the work that you do as well, because I'm sure some women have benefited from you sharing your story.
Yes. Thank
All
you.
right. Ladies, thank you very much for
Thank you.
coming on the record
Thank you.
tonight. That brings us to the end of this segment. Thank you so much for joining us. Keep pushing for the protection of our women and children and men. And please don't be strangers. Anytime, you're welcome. We hope to see you back here again soon. Let's take our final break here and return with what's trending in social media. Stay tuned. So the project really pays itself back. They
Correct.
set up
At the conference,
the school.
As a journalist, I always have to focus on the facts, and sometimes that means going to investigate for myself. On the Record, Thursdays at 8 p.m. right here on RTV.
All right, you're watching On the Record. Welcome back. Time now to see what's trending on social media. We always try to keep you updated with what's happening out there in the social media world. Kiwanis Club of Elite Young Professionals says, here's a quick recap of our Earth Day 2023 Sip and Paint project. We were able to use our artistic skills to paint a few plant pots to donate to the Persis Rogers Home for the Aged. What a great initiative, using Earth Day to do something wonderful for the elderly among us. Also on Earth Day, Queen's College posting at the school planted pumpkin seeds and herbs. The post says, Earth Day reminds us to be more aware of our environments and what we can do, small or big, to make a difference. The Earth Day 2023 theme, invest in our planet. Lots of great stuff going on for Earth Day. I was so pleased with all the activities that I saw. I even went out to Bonefish Pond myself, got in on some of the activities out there. But just great to see all of this focus on the environment and helping to reverse some of the effects of climate change. So kudos to everyone who got involved, whether you were local or international. Well, Vala tweets, this is the first regatta since our national sport has been changed to sailing. Listen, kudos to the government and the ministry for making sailing our national sport. Long overdue, no offense to cricket, but we are certainly better sailors. Glad to see it happen. Side note here, Exuma still has the most amazing waters in the Bahamas. You don't believe me? You could fight me over that, but I'm going to stick with that. All right, this one is pretty hilarious. Kia says, what you want for lunch, whatever this can afford, and this is 2 days before payday. The struggle is real. Listen, I'm with you on that. Sometimes you just got to buy what you can afford. You know, when payday is right there, and when sort of the expenses outlive the money, I know that's a real reality. All right, this next post coming in from Joanna Evans posting, I have done everything I can to prove that my use of a banned substance was accidental and unintentional. Anyone willing to research my history and professional background will see that I came from very humble beginnings with limited financial resources, and I have persevered to stand on my personal and competitive reputation. Just a very unfortunate situation there for our Joanna Evans. I really, really hope that, you know, there's some resolution to this. That's a very unfortunate situation, but we know that the difficulties that these banned substances create for our athletes. Wishing Joanna Evans all the best there. Finally, Stally says, 3 murders before the day even start properly is sickening. This week, the police released their crime statistics and said that murder was down for the first quarter of the year. Now, I can tell you from where I sit, it doesn't feel that way. The amount of murders that we are looking at on a weekly basis, sometimes on a daily basis, is startling. We have a real problem on our hands. I know what the statistics may be telling the police and what they may be telling us, but what we are feeling as citizens is a whole lot different. So to my friends on the Royal Bahamas Police Force, I know what you could do. We got to get this crime situation under control. Well, that's a wrap on the Record tonight. Special thanks to our guests, former magistrate Cleopatra Christie, who represents the Bahamas Crisis Center, and a women's advocate, and a victim, and I call her a survivor of domestic violence, Dinsandria Taylor. We'd also like to thank Dr. Sandra Dean Patterson and Anastasia Forbes for assisting us with tonight's show. And thank you, our viewers, for staying with us tonight. Make sure you join us next week for another topic that directly affects the lives of Bahamians. Until then, I'm Jerome Sawyer. We'll see you again soon.